It was November 24th in the year 1859. On this day, Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, which immediately sold out its initial print run. By 1872, the book had run through 6 editions, and it became one of the most influential books of modern times. Darwin, the privileged and well-connected son of a successful English doctor, had been interested in botany and natural sciences since his boyhood, despite the discouragement of his early teachers. At Cambridge, he found professors and scientists with similar interests, and with their help began participating in several scientific voyages. He traveled around South America for 5 years as an unpaid botanist on the HMS Beagle. By the time Darwin returned, he had developed an outstanding reputation as a field researcher and scientific writer, based on his many papers and letters dispatched from South America and the Galapagos Islands, which were read at meetings of prominent scientific societies in London. Darwin began publishing studies of zoology and geology as soon as he returned from his voyage. Fearing the fate of other scientists like Copernicus and Galileo, who had published radical scientific theories, Darwin held off publishing his theory of natural selection for years. He secretly developed his theory during 2 decades of surreptitious research following his trip on the Beagle. Meanwhile, he married and had 7 children. He finally published Origin of Species after another scientist began publishing papers with similar ideas. His book laid the groundwork for modern botany, cellular biology, and genetics. He continued his eternity in 1882. On November 24th in 1932, the crime lab that is now referred to as the FBI Scientific Crime Detection Laboratory officially opens in Washington, D.C. The lab was initially operated out of a single room and had only one full-time employee, Agent Charles Appel, or Agent Charles Apple. It's A-P-P-E-L. We're going to just go with Apple. Agent Apple began with a borrowed microscope and a pseudo-scientific device called a helixometer. The helixometer purportedly assisted investigators with gun barrel examinations, but it was actually more for show than function. In fact, J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, provided the lab with very few resources and used cutting-edge lab primarily as a public relations tool. But by 1938, the FBI lab added polygraph machines and started conducting controversial lie detection tests as part of its investigations. In its early days, the FBI crime lab worked on about 200 pieces of evidence a year. By the 1990s, that number multiplied to approximately 200,000. Currently, the FBI crime lab obtains hundreds of new pieces of criminal evidence every day. It was November 24th in the year 1963 at 12:20 p.m. in the basement of the Dallas police station that Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin of President John F. Kennedy, is shot by Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner. On November 22nd of 1963, President Kennedy was fatally shot while riding in an open-car motorcade through the streets of downtown Dallas. Less than an hour after the shooting, Lee Harvey Oswald shot a policeman who questioned him on the street. That policeman did continue his eternity. 30 minutes after that, he was arrested in a movie theater by police. Oswald was formally arraigned on November 23rd for the murders of President Kennedy and Officer J.D. Tippit. On November 24th, Oswald was brought to the basement of the Dallas Police headquarters on his way to a more secure county jail. A crowd of police and press with live television cameras rolling gathered to witness his departure. As Oswald came into the room, Jack Ruby emerged from the crowd and fatally wounded him with a single shot from a concealed .38 revolver. Ruby, who was immediately detained, claimed that rage at Kennedy's murder was the motive for his action. Some called him a hero, but he was nonetheless charged with first-degree murder. Jack Ruby, originally known as Jacob Rubenstein, operated strip joints and dance halls in Dallas and had minor connections to organized crime. He also had a relationship with a number of Dallas policemen, which amounted to various favors in exchange for leniency in their monitoring of his establishments. He features prominently in Kennedy assassination theories, and many believe he killed Oswald to keep him from revealing a larger conspiracy. In his trial, Ruby denied the allegation and pleaded innocent on the grounds that his great grief over Kennedy's murder had caused him to suffer psychomotor epilepsy and shoot Oswald unconsciously. The jury found him guilty of the murder with malice of Oswald and sentenced him to die. On October 1966, the Texas Court of Appeals reversed the decision on the grounds of improper admission of testimony and the fact that Ruby could not have received a fair trial in Dallas at the time. In January of 1967, while awaiting a new trial to be held in Wichita Falls, Ruby continued his eternity of lung cancer in a Dallas hospital. The official Warren Commission report of 1964 concluded that neither Oswald nor Ruby were part of a larger conspiracy, either domestic or international, to assassinate President Kennedy. Despite its seemingly firm conclusions, the report failed to silence conspiracy theories surrounding the event, and in 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded in a preliminary report that Kennedy was, quote, probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, unquote, that may have involved multiple shooters and organized crime. The committee's finding, as with those of the Warren Commission, continued to be disputed. On November 24th in the year 1971, a hijacker calling himself D.B. Cooper parachutes from a Northwest Orient Airlines 727 into a raging thunderstorm over Washington state. He had $200,000 in ransom money in his possession. D.B. Cooper commandeered the aircraft shortly after takeoff, showing a flight attendant something that looked like a bomb and informing the crew that he wanted $200,000 for parachutes and no funny stuff. The plane landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, where authorities met Cooper's demands and evacuated most of the passengers. Cooper then demanded that the plane fly toward Mexico at a low altitude and ordered the remaining crew into the cockpit. At 8:13 p.m., as the plane flew over the Lewis River in southwest Washington, the plane's pressure gauge recorded Cooper's jump from the aircraft. Wearing only wraparound sunglasses, a thin suit, and a raincoat, Cooper parachuted into a thunderstorm with winds in excess of 100 miles per hour and temperatures well below zero at the 10,000-foot altitude where he began his fall. The storm prevented an immediate capture, and most authorities assumed he was killed during his apparently suicidal jump. No trace of Cooper was found during a massive search. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy uncovered a stack of nearly $5,880 worth of ransom money in the sand along the north bank of the Columbia River, 5 miles from Vancouver, Washington. The fate of Cooper remains a mystery. Information documented and divulged on this audio file can be verified on History.com.